You're about to witness one of the most explosive, career-defining moments ever to unfold on live television. We're talking about a veteran politician who thought he had the upper hand and a rookie who was about to prove that receipts trump reputation every single time. If you're ready for the full story of how Caroline Levit publicly dismantled a political heavyweight, smash that like button, subscribe, and let us know your initial thoughts in the comments below. The studio was quiet at first, eerily quiet, the kind of silence that usually comes before something explosive. For a moment, it was just another high-stakes political panel broadcast live to millions of viewers. Peter Navarro, a former White House advisor and a man never short on sharp opinions, sat across from Caroline Levit. He was the confident heavyweight, the veteran with decades of experience in the West Wing. She was the rising star, fresh to the national stage. The topic was a familiar one, a debate on economic recovery and post-pandemic job creation. But what happened next turned it into something else entirely. Midway through the discussion, Navarro suddenly leaned forward, his voice edged with arrogance. A slow, almost imperceptible smirk curled his lips as he began to speak. "With all due respect, Caroline," he said, cutting her off, "you simply don't have the experience to understand these dynamics. You're fresh out of the commentary bubble. We did real work in the West Wing. You're just talking." For a split second, the panel froze. Not just the hosts and the other guests, but the viewers at home felt the moment's palpable tension. It was a moment of silence that carried the weight of a slap, a condescending dismissal delivered live to millions. The camera, sensing the shift, zoomed in on Caroline. She didn't blink, she didn't stammer. The smug confidence on Navarro's face stood in stark contrast to the slight shift in her posture and the flicker of fire that ignited behind her eyes. She remained composed, yet the energy around her tightened. Instead of reacting with anger or submission, she gave the kind of grin that warned a storm was coming. The studio, which had been silent for just a moment, suddenly held its collective breath. Everyone, from the control room to the viewers, knew something was about to change.
And with that grin, the storm arrived. "Peter," she said, her voice razor-sharp but composed, "if experience is measured by how many bad calls you've made, then yes, you've got me beat." The studio visibly flinched. The hosts' faces registered a mix of shock and awe. The control room reportedly went into a frenzy. Twitter lit up within seconds. As one user famously posted, "Caroline just served Peter a career obituary live." But this was only the beginning. She didn't stop there. With the cool, calm demeanor of a surgeon, Caroline pulled up past economic forecasts Navarro had made, ones that had aged poorly, to put it mildly. She quoted receipts, pulled up charts, and pointed out direct contradictions, all live on air. She was an archivist with an axe to grind, and the information was her weapon. And here's the wild part. Peter Navarro, a man known for always having the last word, didn't have a single rebuttal ready. He sat there, blinking in silence, utterly exposed. The confident political heavyweight who had once strode through West Wing briefings was suddenly just a man in a chair. His jaw tightened, his normally expressive hands clenched uselessly in his lap. He looked like he was calculating damage control in real time, but the damage was already done. Caroline didn't even glance at him as she kept talking. She pivoted straight to the audience and the panel as if nothing happened, her composure unwavering. "This isn't about seniority. It's about credibility," she continued, her voice gaining a powerful, righteous tone. "And if we're going to measure that by predictions, policies, or public service, I'm happy to hold receipts. Are you, Peter?" That line landed with the force of a physical blow. A visible shudder ran through the audience. The host tried to step in with a redirect, but it was too late. The momentum had shifted entirely. And Caroline? She had just smelled blood.
The host tried to intervene, but the shift was undeniable. Caroline had just smelled blood, and she wasn't letting the moment go. She reminded viewers of Navarro's infamous trade war stance, the economic impact of his tariffs, and how they hurt small American businesses, a sector she'd been actively supporting and advocating for. Her tone became more personal, more surgical. I've spoken to hundreds of business owners in swing states, she said, her eyes now locked on the camera, not him. They're not quoting your policy memos, Peter. They're quoting their bankruptcy notices. Fire. That line alone went viral within minutes. TikTok clips, Twitter threads, news roundups. Conservative and liberal commentators alike couldn't stop talking about how the rookie dismantled the veteran with such precision. This wasn't a general critique. It was an indictment by proxy. The audience could feel it. This wasn't just a disagreement. It was a demolition. At what point does experience become a liability? Caroline leaned into the mic for one final jab in that segment. It's easy to call people inexperienced when your legacy depends on no one looking too closely at your own. The audience gasped. Even some on Navarro's side of the table couldn't hide their expressions. In those few minutes, Caroline didn't just defend herself. She flipped the entire narrative. She was rewriting the room's perception of who truly held the moral high ground. And Peter, still quiet. If Peter Navarro thought the storm had passed, he was wrong. The host tried shifting the conversation to foreign policy, a topic Peter usually dominated. But Caroline wasn't done. She had let him breathe just long enough to feel safe. Then she cut back in. Speaking of China, she said, raising an eyebrow, Peter, would you like to tell the audience how your China policy empowered the CCP's grip over global supply chains while putting American farmers at risk? The panel froze again. Navarro blinked, but Caroline didn't flinch. She kept going, pulling out hard data on small business closures, job losses, and shattered communities, all tied to policies he either championed or helped implement. One panelist muttered, "Damn," under his breath. The mic caught it. Caroline looked directly at Navarro, her voice a calm, dangerous weapon. And you call me inexperienced? At least I didn't burn down the kitchen and call it leadership. The crowd roared. It wasn't a debate. It was a collapse.
The room was still electric, the sound of the crowd's roar fading into a thick, buzzing silence. Navarro, the confident political heavyweight, leaned back in his chair, attempting to reclaim dominance with a smirk that barely concealed his irritation. "You know what this is," he said, gesturing to Caroline with a dismissive wave. "This is a resume-building exercise for a kid who wants to look tough on Fox clips." The audience let out a collective gasp, not because of what he said, but because they knew what was coming. Caroline's lips curled slightly, calm, dangerous. She leaned forward, locking eyes with him. "You can't recognize ambition unless it mirrors your own. And that's why you never saw the downfall coming when your peers outpaced you." She pressed on. "You mock women like me, women who didn't need to sit in a West Wing chair to be heard. But here I am, sitting across from you, and you're the one defending your legacy." She then turned directly to the camera, her voice softening slightly, but the conviction hardening. "Do you trust someone who calls decades of reckless trial and error experience? Or do you believe in leaders who've lived the consequences of those mistakes and dare to challenge them?" It was surgical. Not a sound echoed in the room. Then came the line that cracked the internet. "Peter, your generation sold talking points. Mine is here for receipts." Navarro chuckled, the kind of forced, thin laugh that's meant to dismiss, not entertain. "You've got passion, Caroline," he said with a condescending shrug, "but passion without wisdom is noise." Caroline leaned in, her gaze unblinking. "And wisdom without accountability, that's corruption wearing a tie." A murmur rippled through the studio. She wasn't playing anymore. This had shifted from political ping-pong to public reckoning. She looked at him with an intensity that seemed to peel back his public facade. "I watched my hometown lose everything during policies your name was stamped on. You had the spreadsheets, we had the funerals." Then, turning to the audience, she asked, "How many more are we supposed to forgive in the name of experience?" The crowd wasn't clapping. This was a moment for solemn reflection. "You can call me inexperienced," she finished, her voice a slow burn, "but I've never been paid to ignore a broken system. I've lived inside it, and I'm here to rip the veil off.
Navarro tried to interrupt, but Caroline cut through clean. If the only thing you can attack is my age, then maybe it's not my resume that's outdated. The host blinked, visibly stunned. The crowd was dead silent, not because they weren't moved, but because they were processing. That wasn't a clapback, that was a reset. Navarro leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his face tight, jaw clenched. He wasn't used to being the one under fire, but Caroline Levit wasn't slowing down. She could see through the smug exterior, and she wasn't done dismantling it. "Let's talk about records, Peter," she said coolly. "You want to lecture me on experience? Let's stack it side by side." Navarro scoffed. "You've been in the room for what, a minute?" Caroline didn't flinch. She pulled out a thin printed document. Facts, timelines, dates. "You call yourself a patriot, a protector of American workers, but these are the numbers under your watch. Wages stagnated, small business bankruptcies spiked, and manufacturing jobs in the Midwest dropped again." She slid the paper across the table toward him. "Tell me, Peter, which of these stats do you want to take credit for?" The studio was so quiet, it was as if the set itself was holding its breath. Navarro's lips tightened, but no rebuttal came. Caroline continued, not with rage, but with razor-sharp clarity. "You know the worst part? You still act like that legacy is untouchable. But truth doesn't care how many books you've published. It only cares if people can afford groceries." That line hit like a freight train. "My father worked 2 jobs his entire life and never once made what some of your friends make in a week. So when I speak up, it's not for show. It's not for sound bites. It's because someone has to." She turned slightly toward the camera, eyes piercing through the lens. "How many so-called experts do we have to watch fail before we let someone new try to fix what they've broken?" The audience murmured, not out of confusion, but awakening. There was weight in her words. She wasn't just defending herself anymore. She was speaking for every American who had ever been told their pain was a statistic, their struggle a footnote. A beat of silence followed her final words. Navarro's mouth opened slightly, perhaps to argue, perhaps to salvage the moment, but nothing came out. His confidence cracked. His narrative was officially hijacked. Caroline tilted her head. "I thought you had something prepared." Navarro shifted in his chair, the demolition complete. This wasn't just a debate loss, it was a credibility implosion. The internet was already running with it. Hashtag sit down, Navarro. Hashtag Caroline unfiltered. It was over. Caroline Levit had taken on a man with decades of government credibility and walked out not just intact, but elevated. She didn't need age or rank. She had facts, fire, and the one thing Peter couldn't manufacture anymore, credibility. It reminded millions watching that a new voice bold enough to confront the old guard can shake the very foundation of the conversation. So let me ask you, did Peter underestimate her? Or did he just finally meet someone who saw straight through the act? Let us know your take in the comments below, and don't hold back. If you thought this was wild, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and buckle up, because this is only the beginning.